Hey everyone, and welcome back to our quiet little corner. Tonight we're going to talk about a job from ancient history that might sound a little unusual to our modern ears. Forget being an accountant or a software engineer. How about being a full-time priest for cats? Yes, you heard that right. In ancient Egypt, a land of pyramids and pharaohs, caring for sacred felines wasn't just a hobby for a few devoted enthusiasts. For some, it was a legitimate, highly respected, and very demanding profession. Thinking about your to-do list tomorrow probably seems pretty straightforward now, doesn't it? At least it likely doesn't involve interpreting the will of the gods based on a cat's appetite. Before we delve into the sacred precincts of the cat goddess, if you enjoy these gentle dives into the past, maybe give that like button a little nudge, or consider subscribing so you don't miss our future journeys. I always love to see where you're all listening from. It makes our little community feel wonderfully global. So feel free to leave a comment below. Perhaps you've already dimmed the lights, found your most comfortable spot, and are ready to let the gentle flow of history carry you off. Alright then, let the world outside fade away. Let's drift together down the timeless Nile. In the vast and complex pantheon of ancient Egyptian deities, few were as beloved in the daily lives of ordinary people, particularly in the later periods, as the goddess Batet. Often depicted as a woman with the head of a domestic cat, or simply as a cat herself, Batet was a figure of delightful dualities. In her earlier forms, she was sometimes associated with the fierce, leonine goddess Sekhmet, representing the destructive power of the sun. But over time, her persona softened. She became a benevolent protectress of the home, a goddess of fertility, childbirth, music, dance, and pleasure. She was seen as a guardian against evil spirits and disease, a gentle yet potent force for good. Her chief cult center was the city of Probast, known to the Greeks as Bubastis, located in the Nile Delta. It was here that her most magnificent temple stood, a place of pilgrimage and immense religious significance for thousands of years. The historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BC, described the temple at Bubastis with awe, noting its beauty and the grandeur of the festivals held in her honor. The reverence for Batet was intrinsically linked to the high esteem in which her earthly avatar, the humble cat, Mio or Mit in ancient Egyptian, was held. This veneration wasn't just born of abstract theology. It had deep, practical roots in Egyptian society. Egypt was, fundamentally, an agricultural civilization, its wealth and survival dependent on vast grain stores. These granaries were under constant threat from pests like rats, mice, and snakes. Cats, with their natural hunting prowess, were indispensable allies. They were the silent, efficient guardians of the nation's food supply, patrolling homes, farms, and granaries with a deadly grace. A single cat could save a family's winter stores from ruin. This practical importance elevated their status far beyond that of a simple pest controller. They were seen as protectors, living symbols of the security and abundance that a well-guarded home represented. Their presence was a blessing. This practical value soon intertwined with profound spiritual symbolism. The way a cat cared for its kittens made it a potent symbol of motherhood and domestic harmony, aligning perfectly with Bastet's role as a protectress of the family. Their mysterious, often nocturnal nature, their silent movements, and their eyes that seemed to glow in the dark, hinted at a connection to the other world, to the realm of magic and the divine. The way they loved to bask in the sun connected them to the powerful sun god Are. In fact, one myth told of how Are, in the form of a great cat, defeated the serpent demon Apep, the embodiment of chaos, at the foot of the sacred Presi tree. Thus, the cat was not just a hunter of vermin, but a champion of Ma'at, the cosmic order, truth, and justice, against the forces of chaos. To harm a cat, therefore, was not just an act of cruelty, it was an act of sacrilege, an offense against the divine order itself. This reverence grew over time, reaching its zenith in the late period and Ptolemaic period, where the cult of Batet, and by extension the veneration of all cats, became a massive, nationwide phenomenon. At the heart of this worship were the temples dedicated to Batet, most notably the grand complex at Bubastis. These were not merely places for statues and offerings. They were living sanctuaries, home to hundreds, perhaps even thousands, of sacred cats. These were not ordinary strays. They were considered the living incarnations of the goddess, her spirit manifest on earth. They lived a life of pampered luxury that few humans could dream of. They were housed in special enclosures within the temple precinct, provided with the finest foods, choice cuts of fish, milk, and specially prepared mashes, and cared for by a dedicated staff of priests and priestesses. These individuals, whom we might affectionately call cat priests, had a full-time, sacred responsibility. Their job was to tend to the every need of these divine felines. This involved more than just feeding and cleaning. They were tasked with observing the cat's health, their behaviors, their interactions, as every twitch of a whisker, every graceful stretch, could be interpreted as a divine omen, a message from the goddess herself. The temple was not just a house of worship. It was a divine cattery, a bustling center of sacred life and ritual devotion centered entirely around its feline residents. Now, imagine yourself as a young man, perhaps named Kenaman, from a village further up the Nile. Your family are devout followers of Batet, and through a combination of sincere piety and a well-placed donation, they have secured you a position as an acolyte at her great temple in Bubastis. As you approach the city for the first time, your heart is a flutter of nervous excitement and profound awe. The air hums with a different energy here in the Delta, wetter and more vibrant than your dusty hometown. The temple precinct is vast, a sprawling complex of pylons, courtyards, and colonnades, all carved with images of the goddess in her feline and human forms. You are led by a senior priest, a calm, shaven-headed man named Pashuranmut, whose white linen kilt is immaculately clean. He guides you through towering gateways and across sun-drenched courtyards, the sheer scale of the place making you feel very small and insignificant. Pashuranmut leads you past the main sanctuary, from which you can hear the faint, rhythmic sound of chanting and the gentle music of the sistrum, a sacred rattle used in Bastet's worship. He brings you to a large, walled garden at the rear of the temple complex. Here, he says, his voice a low, gentle murmur, is the heart of the goddess's domain on earth. Prepare yourself. He unlatches a heavy wooden gate, and as it swings open, your senses are overwhelmed. The first thing that hits you is the sound. It's not loud or unpleasant, but a pervasive, multi-layered chorus of soft meows, contented purrs, welcoming chirps, and the occasional playful yowl. It's a sound unlike anything you have ever heard, the collective voice of hundreds of cats. Then the sight. The garden is a feline paradise. Cats of all shapes, sizes, and colors are everywhere. They lounge on sun-warmed flagstones, doze in the shade of lush papyrus plants and sycamore trees, and elegantly patrol the tops of low walls. Some are gathered around shallow stone dishes, lapping at milk. Others chase one another in games of mock combat, their movements a blur of fluid grace. A sleek black cat with eyes like polished emeralds sits atop a small statue of the goddess, observing the scene with regal indifference. A mother cat, tawny and striped, patiently nurses a litter of tiny, wriggling kittens in a sheltered nook. You stand frozen in the gateway, utterly mesmerized. These are not like the working cats you know from home, the lean hunters of the granaries. These animals are sleek, well-fed, their coats gleaming with health. They move with an air of serene confidence, an innate understanding that this place is theirs, that they are revered. A small, ginger-colored cat with a curious tilt to its head detaches itself from a group and pads silently towards you. It stops at your feet, looks up with intelligent green eyes, and lets out a soft, questioning meow. You instinctively reach down, your hand trembling slightly, to stroke its back. The fur is soft as silk. The cat arches into your touch and begins to purr, a deep, resonant rumble that you can feel through the soles of your sandals. Passionate smiles faintly. She accepts you. This is a good sign. He gestures for you to enter. As you step into the enclosure, several other cats turn their heads to regard you, their gazes ranging from aloof curiosity to mild interest. You feel as though you are being judged, weighed, and measured by dozens of pairs of ancient, knowing eyes. This, you realize with a sudden, profound clarity, is not just a garden full of cats. This is a sacred space, a nexus between the mortal world and the divine. And your life's work, your full-time job, has just begun. It will be a life of service, not to a stone statue, but to these living, breathing, purring manifestations of the goddess Batet. Your day as an acolyte, and later a full priest, begins long before the sun's rays have topped the temple pylons. It starts not with the cats, but with yourself. Ritual purity is paramount for anyone serving in the sacred precinct. Before you can even approach the divine animals, you must undergo purification. This involves washing your hands and feet in cool, consecrated water drawn from the temple's sacred lake. You must also rinse your mouth, cleansing yourself of the impurities of the outside world and the lingering traces of sleep. Your attire is simple but specific, a kilt of clean, white linen. No leather or wool is permitted within the sacred spaces, as these materials, derived from other animals, are considered ritually impure. You must also be clean-shaven, not just your face but your entire body. This practice, common among the Egyptian priesthood, was a symbol of purity, removing the last vestiges of the wild, untamed self to make you a clean vessel for divine service. Only once you are physically and ritually clean can you begin your work. The entire process is deliberate and meditative, a way of shifting your mindset from the mundane to the sacred before the day's tasks even commence. Your first duty is in the temple kitchen, a space that operates with the precision of a master chef's domain, but dedicated entirely to feline gastronomy. The sacred cats of Batet were not fed scraps. Their diet was carefully managed and consisted of high-quality ingredients, often sourced from the temple's own extensive estates or provided as offerings by devout pilgrims. A portion of the fish caught in the Nile, a share of the milk from temple-owned cattle, and specific types of bread were all allocated for their consumption. The preparation was itself a ritual. You might spend the early morning hours scaling and deboning fresh tilapia, its silvery scales sticking to your fingers, or mincing choice cuts of meat. This wasn't done hastily. Each action was performed with reverence, often accompanied by quiet hymns or prayers to the goddess. You might learn to mix the minced fish or meat with fine grains and a little milk to create a soft, palatable mash, a recipe passed down through generations of temple priests. The quality of the food was a direct reflection of the devotion paid to the goddess. To offer her avatars anything less than the best would be an insult. The scale of the operation was considerable. Preparing meals for hundreds of cats required a well-organized team and a constant supply chain, making the temple a significant economic entity in its own right. Then comes the feeding itself, a moment of carefully managed, joyful chaos. As you and the other priests carry the heavy stone bowls of fragrant food into the garden enclosure, the air, which was filled with a low hum of purrs, erupts into a chorus of expectant meows. The cats, who a moment ago were lounging sleepily, are now a swirling tide of fur and grace around your feet. They rub against your legs, their tails held high in greeting, their voices a symphony of demands and entreaties. Your job is to place the bowls strategically throughout the garden, ensuring that the more timid cats have a chance to eat without being bullied by the more assertive ones. You come to know their individual personalities. There's the big, one-eyed black cat, a former brawler you've named Heck, or Ruler, who always tries to get the first and largest portion. There's the delicate, pale-furred female who will only eat if you place her bowl in a specific patch of sunlight. And there are the gangs of half-grown kittens who tumble over each other in their eagerness, sometimes falling right into the food bowls. You move among them with a practiced calm, murmuring soothing words, your hands gently guiding and separating them. It's a dance of devotion, ensuring that every one of Bastet's children receives their rightful share. The sight of them all eating peacefully, their little pink tongues lapping at the food you so carefully prepared, fills you with a deep sense of satisfaction. You have fulfilled one of your most basic duties, to nourish the goddess. Once the meal is finished, the cleaning begins. And with hundreds of well-fed cats, this is a substantial and unglamorous task, yet it is performed with the same ritual care as the feeding. The stone food bowls must be collected, scrubbed clean with sand and water, and set out to dry in the sun. The enclosures themselves must be meticulously maintained. You use a simple palm-frond broom to sweep the stone pathways and shaded pavilions. The sand in their toileting areas must be sifted and replaced regularly to maintain hygiene and prevent the spread of disease. Any soiled linen or bedding mats are collected to be washed in the temple laundry. This constant cleaning was not just for appearances. The health of the sacred cat population was of utmost importance. An outbreak of sickness among them would be seen as a sign of the goddess's displeasure, a terrible omen for the temple and for Egypt itself. So you sweep and scrub, the repetitive, physical labor becoming another form of prayer. While you work, you are constantly observing, your eyes trained to spot any sign of illness, a cat that is listless or has no appetite, one with a dull coat or runny eyes. Any such animal would be immediately isolated and tended to by priests who had specialized knowledge of feline ailments, a rudimentary form of veterinary care. Perhaps the most subtle and intellectually demanding part of your job, however, is the art of observation for divination. The cats were not just pets, they were oracles. Their every action was believed to hold meaning, a potential communication from Bastet. After the morning's chores are done, you might be tasked with simply sitting quietly in the garden, watching. You learn to interpret the silent language of the cats. Is a particular cat, known to be shy, suddenly bold and friendly? This could portend unexpected good fortune for a supplicant. Do two cats, normally friends, engage in a sudden vicious fight? This might be an omen of conflict or discord in the state. The way a cat sleeps, curled in a tight ball or stretched out languidly, could be interpreted in relation to the coming harvest. The direction a cat turns its head when a specific question is asked in the sanctuary could provide a yes or no answer. This was not random guesswork. There were likely established traditions and texts, known only to the senior priesthood, that provided a framework for interpreting these feline behaviors. Your role as an acolyte is to observe and report. You might note down that the tawny mother cat moved her kittens from a spot in the sun to a place in deep shade, a detail that a senior priest might later interpret as a warning of a coming heatwave or drought. You learn to be still, to blend into the background, so your presence doesn't unduly influence the cat's natural behavior. You feel the sun warm on your shaven head as you sit on a low stone wall, your eyes half closed, simply watching. You see the intricate social dynamics of their world unfold, the subtle power plays, the fleeting alliances, the tender moments of grooming between companions. You see the patient hunt of a young cat stalking a beetle, its body a study in coiled tension and explosive grace. You see the deep, dreamless sleep of an old cat, its paws twitching as it chases phantom mice in some feline otherworld. In these quiet hours of observation, you feel a deep connection to these creatures, a sense of being a privileged witness to a living, breathing mystery. The mundane tasks of feeding and cleaning give way to a more profound understanding. You are not just a keeper or a cleaner. You are a reader of sacred signs, an intermediary between the human world of questions and the divine world of purrs, stretches, and enigmatic, slit-pupiled stares. It is a slow, patient, and all-consuming job, a lifetime of devotion measured out in meals prepared, shelters cleaned, and a deep, intuitive understanding of the sacred ways of the cat. The city of Bubastis, home to Bastet's primary temple, was the site of one of the most famous and, by some accounts, riotous festivals in all of Egypt. The Greek historian Herodotus provided a vivid, if perhaps slightly exaggerated, description of this annual pilgrimage. He wrote that people traveled from all over Egypt by boat to attend, the journey itself being a prelude to the main festivities. Men and women would crowd onto barges, floating down the Nile, with some women playing rattles or clappers and some men playing pipes, singing and clapping their hands. The atmosphere was one of joyous, unrestrained celebration. When they arrived at Bubastis, a great festival took place, involving vast amounts of wine, music, dancing, and religious ceremonies. Herodotus claimed that more wine was consumed at this one festival than in all the rest of the year. While this might be a bit of hyperbole, it speaks to the immense scale and popularity of the event. At the heart of this celebration was a deep and genuine devotion to the goddess, a desire to thank her for her protection, to seek her blessing for fertility and a happy home, or to ask for her intervention in personal matters. A central part of this popular devotion was the practice of giving votive offerings, gifts to the goddess to gain her favor or express gratitude. While these could take many forms, one of the most common and unique offerings associated with Badat was the cat mummy. Pilgrims arriving at the temple would purchase the mummified remains of a cat to present to the goddess. This was seen as a way of sending a message directly to her, with the spirit of the deceased cat acting as an intermediary. It was a powerful act of personal piety. This practice created a massive industry centered around the temple. The demand for cat mummies was so great that the temple priests oversaw what can only be described as industrial-scale cat breeding and mummification operations. Large cemeteries, or necropolises, dedicated entirely to cats have been discovered near temples like Bubastis and Saqqara. In the 19th century, one such cat cemetery was found to contain such a staggering number of mummies, some estimates say up to 300,000, that they were unfortunately not treated with the reverence they once commanded. They were shipped to England by the ton to be ground up and used as fertilizer. It's a sad end to a sacred practice, but the sheer number of these mummies is a testament to the incredible scale of this aspect of the cat cult. Modern scientific analysis of these surviving cat mummies has revealed some fascinating, and sometimes grim, details. While many of the cats appear to have lived good lives and died of natural causes before being mummified, a significant number show evidence of having been killed deliberately, often at a young age, specifically to supply the votive market. Many were found to have had their necks broken. This might seem shocking and cruel to us, a contradiction to the idea of revering cats. However, to the ancient Egyptians, the logic may have been different. These cats were bred for a sacred purpose. Their death was not seen as a tragedy but as a fulfillment of their destiny, a transformation that allowed them to become messengers to the divine. The priests who performed this act would have done so ritually, perhaps believing they were sending the cat's spirit directly to the goddess. Some mummies, upon X-ray, have even been found to be fakes, elaborately wrapped bundles containing only a few cat bones, a handful of reeds, or sometimes nothing at all. This suggests that, like any large-scale industry, there was an element of commercial enterprise, and perhaps even deception, at play. The priests overseeing these operations were not just spiritual guides. They were managing a complex business with supply chains, production targets, and a vast customer base of faithful pilgrims. Now, imagine it is the time of the great festival. The air in Bubastis is thick with excitement and the scent of incense, roasting food, and flowers. The usual quiet reverence of the temple precinct is replaced by a joyous, bustling energy. Thousands of pilgrims throng the outer courtyards. You, now a junior priest, have been assigned to duty in one of the outer casks where votive offerings are presented. Your job is to interact with the faithful, to guide them, and to receive their offerings with the proper decorum. A family approaches you, a farmer, his wife, and their young son. They have traveled for days by boat, and their faces are alight with a mixture of travel weariness and pious excitement. The farmer explains that his wife has recently given birth to a healthy child after years of praying to Batet. They have come to give thanks. He holds out a small, carefully wrapped bundle. It's a cat mummy, its linen wrappings intricately patterned, its painted face a serene, stylized mask. You take the offering with both hands, bowing your head slightly. The Great One, the Ayavare, she who protects, will be pleased with your devotion. You say, the words a familiar, comforting litany. You can see the relief and gratitude in their eyes. You explain that you will take their offering into the inner sanctums of the temple, where it will be placed with thousands of others, its spirit forever in the company of the goddess. The young boy looks past you, his eyes wide, trying to catch a glimpse of the sacred cattery he can hear but not see. He asks, his voice a whisper, "Are the goddess's real cats in there?" You smile gently. "Yes, they are living with their mother, the goddess. They are happy and safe." You give the family a small clay amulet of Batet as a token of their pilgrimage, and they depart, their hearts full, their duty done. You spend your entire day like this, receiving countless similar offerings, from the humble bundles of poor farmers to the more elaborately decorated mummies offered by wealthy officials. You are the link between their earthly hopes and their divine protector. Later, away from the festival crowds, in the quiet, sterile atmosphere of the Wabbit, the pure place, or embalming workshop, you are initiated into a more somber duty. One of the sacred cats, an old, beloved tomcat who had lived in the temple garden for nearly 20 years, has died peacefully in his sleep. His passing is not a cause for alarm, but for solemn ritual. His body must be prepared for its journey to the afterlife, to become a permanent vessel for the divine spirit. The chief embalmer, a stern but masterful priest, guides you through the process. The air in the Wabbit is heavy with the scent of natron, resin, and sacred oils. The cat's body is laid out on a clean wooden table. The first step is to remove the internal organs, which would cause decay. This is done through a small incision, with the utmost care and reverence. The organs are cleansed, treated with oils, and wrapped in linen, to be placed in tiny canopic jars, just as a human's would be. Then the body itself is packed and covered with natron, a natural salt mixture that will draw out all moisture. It will remain in the salt for many days, a quiet, desiccating sleep. When it is finally removed, it is a fraction of its former weight, stiff and dry. Now the wrapping begins. This is an art form. You learn to wind long strips of fine linen, hundreds of yards of it, around the body, tightly and evenly. Each layer is treated with warm, sticky resin, which acts as a glue and a preservative. As you wrap, senior priests recite incantations, prayers for the cat's safe passage through the underworld, ensuring its spirit, or ba, can reunite with its body and travel freely. You work in focused silence, the only sounds the soft tear of linen and the low murmur of the prayers. You meticulously wrap each leg, the tail, the head, carefully preserving the cat's essential form. Sometimes, decorative elements, like a painted mask or beaded patterns, are incorporated into the wrappings. The final product is a compact, respectful effigy, a sacred object. It feels a world away from the living, purring creatures in the garden. Here, in the quiet of the embalming house, you are confronted with the other side of the sacred cycle, not life, but eternal preservation. You are not just a caretaker of living cats, but a guardian of their immortality. The sacred status of cats in ancient Egypt was protected by some of the most stringent laws imaginable. To kill a cat, even accidentally, was a capital crime. The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, writing in the 1st century BC, recounts a story he witnessed firsthand that starkly illustrates this point. He tells of a Roman citizen, part of a diplomatic legation, who accidentally killed a cat. Despite the official pleas from the Egyptian king, Ptolemy XII, who feared Roman retribution, the local populace was so enraged that they formed a mob, dragged the man from his house, and killed him. Diodorus notes that this was not an act sanctioned by the authorities but an uncontrollable outpouring of public fury. Whether the story is entirely accurate or slightly embellished, it powerfully conveys the intensity of the popular sentiment. Harming a cat was simply unforgivable. Even the natural death of a household cat was an occasion for deep mourning. Herodotus observed that when a pet cat died, the family members would shave their eyebrows as a sign of grief, a profound and very visible expression of their loss. The deceased pet would often be embalmed and buried with the same care and expense that the family could afford, sometimes in a small coffin or wrapped in fine linen. This wasn't just affection for a pet as we might understand it. It was a religious duty, ensuring the spirit of the cat, an embodiment of the divine, was treated with the proper respect on its journey to the afterlife. This intense veneration, and the associated temple industries, flourished for centuries, particularly during the late period and under the Greek Ptolemaic dynasty that ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great. The Ptolemaic rulers, being politically astute, generally respected and even patronized the traditional Egyptian cults as a way to legitimize their own rule. The festivals at Bubastis continued, and the cat mummy trade likely reached its peak during this time. However, the winds of change began to blow more forcefully when Egypt was formally annexed as a province of the Roman Empire in 30 BC. While the Romans were generally tolerant of local religions, their pragmatic, state-focused worldview often clashed with what they sometimes saw as exotic or irrational animal worship. Roman officials and writers expressed a mixture of fascination and occasional derision for Egypt's animal-headed gods and sacred creatures. The official state support that the temples had once enjoyed began to wane. The vast temple estates, which had provided the economic engine for cults like that of Batet, were gradually curtailed or repurposed by the Roman administration. The final decline came with the rise of Christianity. As the new faith spread across Egypt from the 1st century CE onwards, it presented a fundamental challenge to the old polytheistic religion. Christianity, with its monotheistic creed and its rejection of idol and animal worship, was fundamentally incompatible with the ancient traditions. Early Christian leaders actively preached against the old gods, viewing them as demonic or false. Temples were sometimes repurposed as churches, or simply abandoned and fell into ruin. In 392 CE, the Roman Emperor Theodosius I issued edicts that effectively outlawed pagan practices throughout the empire, closing the temples for good. The millennia-long worship of Batet, along with the entire Egyptian pantheon, was officially over. The role of the cat priest, once a respected full-time profession, ceased to exist. The sacred catters were disbanded, the rituals forgotten, and the once divine cats became, once more, simple animals, valued for their mousing skills but stripped of their sacred aura. The great temple at Bubastis crumbled, its stones eventually carried away for other buildings, its legacy buried beneath the sands of time until rediscovered by modern archaeologists. Now let us return to you, Kenaman, one last time. The years have passed like water flowing down the Nile. Your hair is no longer shaven, but thin and white. Your once straight back is bent from a lifetime of stooping to clean enclosures and lift heavy bowls. You are an old man now, a high priest, your face a roadmap of wrinkles carved by countless Egyptian suns and the quiet smiles of feline companionship. You sit on a low stone bench in the sacred garden, the same garden you entered as a wide-eyed boy so long ago. The temple is quieter now. The great festivals are a memory. The throngs of pilgrims have dwindled to a trickle of old faithfuls. The new rulers from Rome have little time for the old ways, their priorities focused on grain taxes and legions, not goddesses and cats. The world outside the temple walls is changing, speaking new languages and praying to a new, singular God. But here, in your sanctuary, the rhythm of your days has remained much the same. A young, sleek black cat, a distant descendant of the very first one you met, leaps silently onto the bench beside you. It butts its head against your wrinkled hand, and you begin to stroke its soft fur, the gesture as natural and unconscious as breathing. You look around the garden. Many of the residents are old, like you. There are fewer kittens these days. The temple can no longer support the vast breeding programs of its heyday. But the cats that are here are still treated with the same reverence. You still oversee the preparation of their food, though the ingredients are humbler now. You still ensure their enclosures are clean. And you still watch them, not for grand state omens, but for the quiet comfort their presence brings. You remember the thousands of pilgrims you have guided, the countless sacred mummies you have prepared and blessed. You recall the joy on the faces of families who believed the goddess had answered their prayers, and the profound, silent sorrow of preparing a beloved temple cat for its eternal rest. You think of the world outside, of the stories you hear of the old gods being forgotten, their statues toppled. A sadness touches your heart, a gentle ache for a fading world. But then you look at the cat beside you. It has settled into a loaf, its eyes closing in blissful contentment, its purr a low, steady vibration against your arm. In its perfect, self-contained serenity, you see something eternal, something that transcends the rise and fall of empires and the changing names of gods. It is the simple, profound magic of a living creature at peace. You realize that your life's work was not about administering a complex industry or preserving a powerful institution. It was about service. It was about the daily, sacred act of caring for another being, of finding the divine in a soft purr, a graceful leap, a trusting gaze. You have been a priest, yes, but more than that, you have been a keeper of the peace, a guardian of small, sacred lives. And as the sun begins to set, casting long, golden shadows across the quiet garden, you feel a sense of completion. The world may forget, but you will remember. And now, as the story of the cat priest fades into the gentle quiet of the past, let your own mind drift. The work is done. The offerings have been made, the rituals observed. The great temple of Bubastis is now silent, its halls empty but for memory and the desert wind. But imagine, in a quiet corner of that ruined sanctuary, a single sliver of moonlight falls through a crack in the ancient stone. It illuminates a patch of sand, and curled within that patch of light is a cat sleeping. It is a descendant of those sacred felines, carrying their ancient grace in its very bones. It knows nothing of goddesses or empires, of priests or pilgrims. It knows only the warmth of the sand and the safety of the shadows. Listen to its breathing, a soft, almost inaudible rhythm. Feel the deep peace of its slumber. The night is calm, the air still and warm, carrying the faint, timeless scent of dust and stone. The great river now flows on, as it always has, its waters dark and mysterious under the stardusted sky. All the busyness, all the devotion, all the history, has settled into this one, simple, peaceful image. A sleeping cat in a sliver of moonlight. Let this image be your focus. Let the quietness of the temple surround you. There are no more duties to perform, no more omens to read. There is only the stillness of the night, and the gentle pull of sleep. Allow the peace of this ancient, sacred place to envelop you, to quiet your thoughts, and to carry you softly into a deep and restful dream. Good night.